I'm here this afternoon with Molly Criner, the county clerk for Erie County. Molly, your life has suddenly become of great interest to a lot of people, but before we kind of go to today's moment, I'd like to kind of roll the clock back just a little bit, give a little background and all.
Okay.
You are a Christian.
Yes.
Where does your faith stand? Well, tell me some of the aspects of being a Christian and what being a Christian means to you.
Well, it's life. It influences every decision you make.
Might speak just a little louder because...
Okay. Being a Christian, being a follower of Christ is life. It influences every decision I make, or else I want it to. The times when it does it, I'm not happy about that. Being a follower of Christ influences everything I think about myself, everything I think about other people, everything that I do in my everyday life. Everything is run through the filter of Jesus, what He's done for me, and what His principles are. So it's just life for me. It's not something you do just sometimes. It's just who you are.
It's not just Sundays.
No. Absolutely not.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, on Sundays I feel less spiritual than a lot of other days, so it has nothing to do with it.
I understand that. Things changed on June 26th when the decision came down. You had to make a decision, and what went through your mind when you looked at the Supreme Court decision? What was your initial reaction? What were the things you had to weigh?
Well, actually, I started weighing days before, actually a couple of months when, I knew this was coming. And then the couple of days before the Supreme Court decision, I just felt like I knew what it was going to be. And so I was thinking about it before the decision actually came down. Of course, then it got real. There was so much to weigh. One of the first things that I did was read the opinions for myself and the dissenting opinions.
Uh-huh.
And this, of course, is something that the voters of Texas have voted on and come to a different conclusion. It's something that our legislators have come to a different conclusion about. And I was dismayed, of course, with the ruling. And, do not believe that that lines up with God's law and God's plan for us. For many reasons, particularly those involving children. But it was a real struggle to think about, me. What's my, okay, now it's down to me. What do I do or don't do? I am the authority in Texas, every county clerk is, to issue a marriage license. And so, that put me in this position of what am I going to do? And I am not the only clerk that's thinking about this. Every clerk in Texas was thinking about it.
Sure.
It's been under discussion here and there for months. I've talked to clerks personally around the state who were just in agonizing over their own personal beliefs, the violation of their Christian conscience and having to do this. And just people are agonizing. It's not a, oh, well, should I or shouldn't I? It's been an agonizing decision for many people.
Did you take it to your family, to your
Absolutely.
husband? Did you discuss, what is that like to make a decision to take a stand like that?
Well, first I had to think and pray about it a lot myself and find out, and I prayed kind of in steps. One of the first things said was that, I don't have to do it, but my deputies can, and I can fulfill, my Christian conscience that way. But for me, that wasn't an option when I prayed about it. My authority, I would be giving my authority to somebody else to do that. That's just like me doing it. So yeah, I started talking to my husband, and of course, it's not something we haven't discussed before. But when I came to a point where I believe, when I read the Supreme Court decisions and the dissenting opinions, that's when my deeply held religious beliefs sort of became exponentially bound to my own convictions about the law and the rule of law, and that our founding fathers, who were way predominantly Christians, they knew how fallible human beings are.
Yes.
They knew how corruptible we are, what a sin nature that we had. And they knew the only way to protect the liberties that they believed were given from God to us was to establish a kind of government that would break up the balance of power and would, in the most human way possible, prevent one group making law and deciding things for everybody, but would leave the government in the hands of the people through their elected representatives. They did everything they knew to establish that rule of law so that our God-given liberties could be preserved. That was their whole goal, was that our God-given liberties could be preserved. And so, even though this is a crisis of my Christian belief, and it is, it's something even beyond that.
Yes.
It's a crisis of our Constitution. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution.
Exactly.
And this is a crisis of that. Many people have made the decision and come to the conclusion that to uphold the Constitution, they must follow this ruling. I came to the completely opposite conclusion, that in order to uphold the Constitution, the written Constitution of the United States, and the God-given liberties given therein, that I could not follow this ruling. So while my religious conviction gives me energy and impels me, it is the rule of law that is at stake here. And I happen to be in a position at this moment where they have to have my signature. To do this, my signature has to be on something. There's a lot of people who wanted me to believe that I'm not performing the ceremony, I'm just pushing the paper, so it's not me. But anybody with $10 and an internet connection can get a ministerial license these days and be fine, be lawfully wed a couple. The clerk is really the last gatekeeper, in my
Yes.
opinion. So you said, how did this decision look? I talked to my husband a lot. I cried a lot. I prayed a lot. In fact, more than one night. I was up all night praying.
Wow.
At one point we sat, I have several children, but we sat a couple of them who would be the most affected by it down, and we said, look, this is what I'm thinking. Originally my original intent was that I would just resign. But after reading the ruling and the dissenting opinions, I realized it went so much deeper than just my religious conviction.
Yeah.
That the rule of law and the Constitution was at stake here. And resigning would not do anything to preserve those.
Yeah.
Not only that, I've only been in office a short time. We had a lot of things that had to be taken care of and fixed, just from a lot of different circumstances. And we are in the middle of a lot of big projects. We're in the middle in my office. For me to walk out would be a real detriment to the county. They would really have difficulty finding the next person to do that, to walk right in and everything continue to go smoothly. It would be a time of upheaval. And I felt like that was not fair to the voters of Marion County, that I asked them to elect me and now I walk out on the job.
Well, and
Not
they
only
knew you, they knew your principles, they knew your character when the citizens of this county elected you for this very important office as well.
I certainly made that clear who I was when I was running for office. I didn't hide my convictions. Not only that, here's another thing to consider. My deputies, there's no one in my office who wants to do this, even if I were to delegate my authority to them. So if I resign, what the county would have to do would be to appoint another clerk. Well, what is the first question they would have to ask the person they were thinking about appointing? They would have to ask them if they were willing to do this. This has become a religious test for office. And there is not in this country supposed to be a religious test to hold office. But the person they appointed, they would have to make sure that they didn't have a religious objection to this first. We're just heading down that road. So, it's funny, our kids said, our youngest son, still in high school, said, this happens often, I guess, with mothers and sons, but I belabored the point and laid out, this and this and this, and this is why I believe this, and this and this and this, and this is what could happen, and these could be the consequences. And my son's kind of, and then I got through and I said, so what do you think? He said, if it's right, you got to do it.
Done.
It's pretty black and white for him, And my children all know I'm kind of a history buff and a history nerd, and although there's so much I don't know, and I love the Constitution, and I've tried to instill that in my children. And for them, they all knew if they had that aspect in it, then there's nothing casual about that for me.
Mm-hmm.
I went through. I thought deeply about what could be the consequences for the county if I refuse to do this but stay in office. What could be the consequences for my family? I actually made a call to a man I know who had endured a lot of persecution for, a stand in a similar arena. And the picture he painted was grim. And I became frightened for my family, my safety.
Yeah.
And it's not so much when it's your safety, that's one thing, but when you're thinking about the safety of children or grandchildren, that's a different deal. And I really just got really rattled. And I honestly did not sleep at all for about 4 days. I was nauseated. And I continued to talk about this with my husband, and he has been a rock on more than one occasion. His clarity, he just shot through all the bleh, and he came right to the point for me, and was so able to clarify for me what even I was thinking when I would just get drowning in the mud of it. And he was totally on my side, and he weighed all the consequences for our family too. And in the end, I came to the conclusion that I really, in order to uphold my oath, to uphold the Constitution, this is what I had to do. It's either uphold it or don't. And to uphold it, this is what I had to do. Now, I still suffered. I still was terrified.
No.
Terrified, literally. I mean, terrified. I never experienced that kind of fear.
Have you had threatening calls?
I wouldn't say threatening. I would say humiliating, insulting, not threatening at this point.
Okay.
But here's the deal. In the end, and this is what my husband said to me on the morning when I nearly lost it and was about to get in my car and just drive away and never come back. Just forget it. It's not my problem. I'll walk away. He said, and I went to him with my plethora of emotional roller coaster, and he said, you have to make a decision. Before God and your own belief, you've got to make a decision, and then you have to stand by that decision. And it doesn't matter what your body does, how sick at your stomach you feel. It doesn't matter what your emotions do.
Wow.
All that doesn't matter. You have to do what you have to do, whichever decision you make. And I'll support you, but it's time you have to make a decision. And I didn't really like him talking to me like that, to tell you the truth.
Wow.
But as he was talking to me like that, I realized he was doing what a lot of fathers do, And hey, if you're going to play football, that's fine, but you're going to stick it out to the end, and it doesn't matter how many times you get hit. That's what Dad said.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I kind of had a revelation that the implications of this law are that we're being told that children do not need a father or a mother. That children, it doesn't matter if they don't have a father, or it doesn't matter if they don't have a mother. And it does matter. Yeah. Deeply. And those things fuel and undergird my outrage at the violation of our Constitution.
True. So true. You, at this point, made that decision then, and then you wrote an email to the other county clerks. I guess it went to all of them across the state?
It did.
I think you have it there in front of you. Molly, would you read this letter to my audience so they can hear your heart in this matter? And loud enough for them to hear it too.
Okay. Dear fellow clerks, almost 3 years ago, I joined the ranks of county clerks in Texas. One thing that impressed me about this group, and I gotta tell you, I'm not making this up, the clerks in Texas are the most amazing, dedicated public servants you will ever find. I have often just felt humbled in their presence. They're smart, they're just awesome. One thing that impressed me about the group was the superior level of dedication and professionalism I saw among you. I was proud to become part of a family of officials whose members endeavor to follow the law to the best of their ability. In the wake of the Supreme Court ruling of June 26th, in Obergefell versus Hodges, I admit I don't know exactly the pronunciation of that, I, like many of you, was dismayed and unsure of my constitutional duties concerning marriage licenses in Texas. However, after reading the ruling of June 26th and the dissenting opinions myself, I have become convinced that the justices of the Supreme Court acted outside and against the authority granted to them by the very Constitution that we have sworn to uphold. I'm no constitutional scholar, and that is so true, I'm not. But I have studied American history, and everybody in high school who has knows this. I've studied enough to remember that our founding fathers were fearful of too much power in the hands of a few. And that was, to a great extent, I'm adding something here. That was to a great extent because of their Christian beliefs and their acknowledgement and realization of the sinfulness of man. They were fearful of too much power in the hands of a few. Consequently, they created a constitutional republic in which the authority to rule belonged to the people, to be exercised through their elected representatives. In that Constitution, the Supreme Court was given the authority to expound the law, not rewrite it or remake it. This court, or at least 5 members of it, the Supreme Court, seems to me to have violated that constitutional authority. Their decision appears to be so far outside the Constitution and the 14th Amendment that it can't be considered lawful by we the people. In addition, 2 of the justices violated federal law by not recusing themselves when they had a personal prejudice in the case. As a country, it's inherent in our very DNA to stand against unlawful seizures of power that violate our God-given rights and liberty. This decision looks like just such a seizure. It went beyond the judge's confined duty of interpreting the written Constitution and established precedent and instead redefined marriage in the way they would like it to be. Natural marriage can be recognized by government, but it cannot be redefined without stepping out of the bounds of nature and nature's God, who was recognized at the founding of our nation as being the very source of our liberties. I have great respect for my fellow clerks. I know that what I told them was, I know you have all taken this matter seriously. Not a few of you have, happily or unhappily, come to the conclusion that to keep your oath, you must uphold the Supreme Court ruling. I have come to the opposite conclusion. To keep my oath to uphold the Constitution, I must reject this ruling that I believe is lawless. It's a scary thing to do, but I believe strongly that I have to stand for the Constitution and the rule of law. I hold no animosity toward anyone with a different view. And you know, that just reading that right there made me think of some things that I've been told that happened in Germany when Hitler took power. And there were county clerks then that were asked to begin gathering information, collecting information about the Jews in order to single them out and identify them, and know where they were. And there were county clerks who refused to do that. They were being ordered by the law, by the head of their government to do that. But they knew that was immoral. They knew there was a higher law, and they refused to follow a law that they knew was immoral. And I've been told that our military has, that when our military go through training, our soldiers are taught that they must obey commanders, unless the commander orders them to do something illegal, like to shoot purposely an innocent civilian or something. And then our military are taught they must resist being given an illegal order. I believe this boils down to an illegal order. I didn't write that in here. I'll finish up.
Okay.
I hope that you county clerks who believe as I do will stand alongside me. I'm sincerely calling for the support of the citizens of Texas and of Marion County. I am imploring the Texas legislature to exercise its authority under the 9th and 10th Amendments and reject this ruling as being without authority. And
Did you hear back from any of the county clerks?
very few, a handful. Some saying, I'm proud of what you're doing, period.
Mm-hmm.
A few who really would like to do what I'm doing. but for whatever reason, they've decided they just can't. And I totally understand that.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's got to decide things like that for themselves, and I could not ask anybody to take the risk I'm taking.
It's a hard decision, but you're standing up for Christian principles and values in this arena. But we're coming to a day when Christians in lots of different arenas are going to have to make that same choice. How would you encourage others to do and to take the stand that you're taking?
I think number one is that you must know your Savior. You must know the price He paid for you. And that must inform your entire life, not just a piece of it. And in the end, you know, my husband and I discussed at great length, and I talked to other people about it, and I talked to, you know, this could happen, 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 and everything was worse than the last thing. And, you know, some experts would say, well, maybe it won't, or maybe it'll end here, or maybe it'll, but you know, in the end, really, all that is immaterial. Often when our God calls us to do something, He just says, do it, and you don't get to see what the outcome is going to be.
True.
And so I would say, investigate the outcome. Get some good advice. Find out what all is possible. Look at the whole big, bad picture. Do it. Don't tell yourself that it might not get bad or maybe it won't matter. Look at how bad it could be. And then go back to your Savior and decide between you and Him, what do you have to do? And then forget the outcome.
So you made your decision. Your office here will not issue a marriage license for a same-sex couple. Neither you nor any of your deputies in your office. Have you been tested in that arena? Has anyone in Arion County, a resident of Arion County?
No resident of Arion County, no.
Okay.
A couple of people posing as a same-sex couple came in. It turns out they were not. They were reporters. And so, you know, I did what I would do in any case. It really doesn't matter, I guess, who they were. You know, and in that moment, when I was speaking to them, I just really realized how much I love people. I just, you know, we are all, no matter what path we're on, no matter what we believe, and I understand there are Christians who do not agree with me at all. Christians who have a deep faith of their own, who think that I'm completely doing the wrong thing and that same-sex marriage is fine with them. And I mean no disrespect to them. I mean no disrespect to the same-sex couples who wish the benefits of marriage for their relationship. No animosity toward them. I just have to look at what God said. And I have to look at the way that our Constitution was based on what God said. And I have to make that decision based on that. So yes, it has been tested, although it turned out it wasn't a real test.
So where do you go from here? Is there another hurdle down the road that you see, or is it just work as always in your office?
I'm certainly trying to focus on work. It's been very difficult, but I'm trying to focus on work. I owe the citizens of Arion County to get my job done, and I'm trying to do that as best as possible. That's really all I want to do, is be able to get my job done.
Let me ask you a question that just came to mind. Prior to June 26, has there ever been an occasion while you've been in office for a couple, same-sex couple, to come in and request a license here in Arion County?
No. You mean, has anyone ever come in? No.
Mm-hmm.
No. In fact, we do very few marriage licenses at all. We're just not a big county.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you know, and a lot of people told me, just say you'll do it, and it'll never happen. You can get everybody off your back, and it won't matter. But that's not addressing the constitutional issue.
Right.
or the religious liberty issue.
Yeah.
So,
Have you spoken with some people about potential actions that they may be looking at taking to reverse this decision of the Supreme Court?
well, I know that clerks in other states are upset. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama. I know that I believe there are remedies that state governments can take. I believe really this is a state issue that a state government needs to address as a state government, not county clerks, 254 county clerks each making their own decision.
Well, and the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, I believe, was the one who sent notice to the various, am I correct, to the various clerks, or did a press release at least, stating that any justice of the peace, county clerks, etc., would not have to engage in same-sex marriages.
To participate by issuing a license or
Right.
performing a ceremony. Attorney General Paxton was asked to issue an opinion, and he did. My take is on his opinion was that he did uphold the idea of religious liberty, and that no one should have to break their religious conscience or their religious beliefs in order to participate in this ruling. But he also made it clear that clerks could still be sued. Clerks could still incur the normal consequences that we would think if he had rendered no opinion. So there are many clerks who, although encouraged by his mention of religious liberty and his seeming to say that no one should have to violate their conscience, really in the end it didn't, the opinion didn't really give us much that we could actually stand on. The governor also issued a statement right away, and he just so encouraged us about our religious liberties. But there again, I think it's a little chaotic to expect 254 counties to address a state issue where they could all make a different decision. And I think the state government needs to do something. I don't know if that means, and I have heard several things. I've heard that a special session could be called and the legislature could come back in session to address this. I know they had an opportunity to address it during the regular session. I have heard that Supreme Courts in other states may say that this is null and void in their state and they're not going to do it. And there's precedent for that. The declaration lists the state of Wisconsin having done that in the past. And it's a states' rights issue. I am, in the dissenting opinions, I read that Justice Kennedy himself in a different case, I believe it was Windsor, part of his opinion in that he wrote was that the Supreme Court does not have the authority to decide issues of marital relations. He wrote that 2 years ago. But now 2 years later, he suddenly decides he does have the authority? That's a pretty big flip-flop in a pretty short time from people that were putting our such great reliance on. So I hope that, I would love to see our state government or Supreme Court say, Texas isn't going to do this. I would love to see the Attorney General, the governor do. I don't know I'm not sure what he could do, but I'd love to see him do something. And I believe it's being discussed in other states. How can our state say we're not going to follow this ruling? And I believe I'm not the only one who feels like it's stepped outside the bounds of what the Supreme Court can, has
True.
the authority to do. And, we've all done it. You see a politician on TV or you see an elected official in a newscast and you just see them waffle. And it makes you so mad. You're like, why don't they stand up for what they think? Why don't they stand up for what they know is right and just take the consequences? So they get thrown out of office, so they get, they lose election. Why don't they just speak the truth and stand up? And I've done the same thing myself. Why don't they? Well, it's different when the shoe's on the other foot. When you are the one that is going to have to take a stand that may cause you really don't have any idea what kind of injury. And maybe your family, and maybe injury to your reputation, injury to your physical harm is not out of the question, financial injury. I've been told everything that I own can be taken from me if I'm sued. You know, the good thing about that is I don't have much. You know, they can come pick up all the used, you know, we have some broken down cars sitting around the place, so hey, they can come get those, but I don't own a lot. But nobody wants the idea of being thrown out of their home or being left destitute.
No,
It's very scary.
Yeah, absolutely, it is.
Even if what you have isn't much, you know, it's yours and you got it. And it doesn't really matter what the consequences are.
Yeah.
Do you do, I'm not saying don't consider them. Count the cost. As Christians, we all know that scripture, count the cost, consider them, think about it. Think about what the impact on other people is going to be, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your county. But after you've considered the cost and you've decided this is the right thing to do, then you have to forget that and just stand there, whatever comes. And that's what I'm doing.
You mentioned yesterday that, or whenever it occurred, that the bogus same-sex couple came in and word got out about it in this community, that the courthouse lawn was soon covered with people that came and started praying on your behalf.
That was the real story. You know, the couple that came into my office, they talked to me and then they left and they went to the sheriff's office and talked to the sheriff, and that's in their story. And then they went downtown and went in the convenience stores and began interviewing, you know, 18-year-old clerks in convenience stores. But what they didn't know was that by 5 o'clock, I think my interview with them happened late afternoon, I don't remember exactly what time, but by 5 o'clock, 30 people at least or more were on the courthouse lawn waiting.
That's a lot in Merton.
Waiting for me to leave, come out the door.
Oh.
I mean, they got the word out that quickly. And waiting for me to come out the door so they could pray for me, so they could tell me that they are glad that I'm doing what I'm doing. And I really don't have any words for that, you know. They weren't there because of my scintillating personality or, you know, a personal like for me.
But you were taking a
there.
stand as a Christian for your Christian values and principles. And they were respecting and honoring that.
And for the Christian underpinnings of our Constitution and our nation.
Exactly.
And our God-given liberties. And yes, that's what they were there for, and I don't know how to tell you. It was beautiful, and I wish the reporters that were downtown would have, you know, looked up the hill and seen all the cars and all the people up on the hill. And actually, I had text messages and emails from people since then saying I wanted to be there, but I was out of town. I wanted to be there, but I don't know what happened. Evidently, somebody texted somebody who texted somebody, and it went all over the place. And, you know, everybody, many people knew about it very quickly, and many wanted to be here and couldn't be. You know, they might have been at their job, they might have been whatever. And I had people coming by the house that evening saying I couldn't be here, but I wanted to be. You know, I have been told that, and we've all heard it saying, when the ship goes down, the rats jump off. And people have told me that, you know, all this support you're getting, it's going to disappear when things get tough. And, you know, that's another thing I had to think about. My husband and I talked that over, that when it's time, if everybody goes away and it's just you and me, are we still going to be here? And we, you know, that's another thing we had to decide, that our decision isn't based on support. I'm thrilled there's support. I'm glad there's support. It seems like people are just screaming for somebody to say no.
Yes.
So, you know, I feel like there is a lot of support, but my decision isn't based on the support. It's based on what I think I have to do. And I got to admit, you know, the peace of God is just, once I really decided, I have been totally at peace since then and not afraid at all.
Praise God.
Now, you know, tomorrow, you may see me in my little car with a scarf over my head, disguising myself and driving to Timbuktu to get out of here. I guess I can't, you know, say about the future. That's not my intent. My intent is to stand here. But I don't know how much personally I can take. I just have to leave that up to God.
One day at a time.
One day at a time, one step at a time.
Well, prayerfully, Christians will continue to support, stand up, and be there for you and for other things that will be coming up in the future that we need as Christians to stand up together to defend, as you say, our Constitution, our biblical principles, and what it means to be a Christian. Molly, I appreciate your time today. Is there anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. I think I would be in a different position had the laws of Texas been in agreement with this ruling, or if our national or federal Congress had made this decision, then the law would have gone through the proper channels, and not violated our Constitution for me. And maybe I'd be in a different position. Maybe my only recourse would be to resign. But based on what we have constitutionally, the values we have that my own Christian beliefs uphold and undergird, then this is where I am. And hey, I hope everybody really likes me when it's over. But and I hope I still have a home, and I hope I'm not in jail. But I really can't think about any of that. I just leave that in the hands of God and go on.
Thank you for standing up for the Constitution and for our rights as Christians. God bless you. We've got one final thought, something that came up. So we're doing a little PS to our interview. Molly, what came to mind?
Well, I have a new grandson. And, if I start bawling, any grandmother in the world will understand why. Because, hey, your grandkids, they really are the best thing, like everybody says. But as I was struggling so much with this decision, I got to be around him, and I was holding him, and I kept looking at him and thinking, what kind of world am I leaving for him? What kind of, someday is he going to say, he calls me Molly, or he doesn't call me anything yet, it's too little, but that's what I hope he calls me. Who knows what he'll call me. But someday I don't want him to look at me and say, hey, you were there when the Supreme Court did that. What did you do about it? Mm-hmm. What did you were in this position of, in office, what did you do?
Yeah.
And I realized, it's the same decision that our founding fathers had to make, and it's the same decision that people all along the way have had to make. What kind of government, what kind of climate are we going to leave for these precious children?
Yeah. And
that informed my decision as much as anything. But as long as I believe this is right, I have to go forward for my little grandson.
Absolutely. Great closing thought. Thank you.
Thank you.